Hello everyone. Welcome back to Daily English Podcast.
A few years ago, I met a woman named Sarah. She was sitting in a dusty antique shop in Paris, gently holding an old, cracked teacup.
She wasn't buying it.
She just sat there, staring at it for almost 20 minutes. When I finally asked if it was a special cup, she smiled softly.
No, she said.
But it looks exactly like the one my mother dropped on the floor 20 years ago. The day we had our biggest argument.
The day I moved out.
She traced the small crack with her finger. I spent 20 years wishing I had caught that cup before it hit the ground.
Wishing I had stayed. And now, she's gone.
She put the cup back on the shelf. Most people spend their lives walking forward, she whispered, while their hearts keep looking backward. I have never forgotten those words.
Today, we are going to talk about that feeling. About the weight of yesterday.
We are going to explore why so many of us build beautiful houses in the present, but choose to live in the basement of the past.
Why is it so hard to let go? Why do our minds hold on to things that are already gone? Let me tell you about another person. A man named David. David was a very successful businessman in New York.
He had a nice apartment, a nice car, and enough money to buy anything he wanted.
But David was deeply unhappy.
Every evening, he would sit in his silent, expensive living room and think about a small town in Italy he had visited when he was 22. He remembered the smell of fresh bread. He remembered a girl with dark hair who laughed at his terrible Italian. He remembered the feeling of having no money, but having endless time.
Now, David was 50.
He was rich, but time felt very short. I made a mistake, David told me once.
I should have stayed in Italy. My whole life since then has just been an echo. A shadow of what could have been.
He spent his present life punishing himself for a choice he made 30 years ago. He was a prisoner in a cage built from his own memories. Psychologists have a name for this feeling. They call it rosy retrospection.
It's a trick our minds play on us. Have you ever noticed that the past often looks much better when you look back at it?
Our brains have a funny habit of forgetting the bad parts, the heat, the arguments, the anxiety, the stomach aches, and only remembering the golden moments. The laughter, the sunsets, the perfect feeling. We compare our real, messy, complicated present, where we have to pay bills and do laundry and deal with stress, to a past that has been perfectly edited by our memory.
It's an unfair fight. The present can never win against a perfect memory. David wasn't actually missing Italy. He was missing the feeling of being 22. He was missing the feeling of possibilities.
The dark-haired girl was probably just a nice person, but in David's memory, she became a symbol of a perfect life he lost.
But that's not the most interesting part of David's story. Something unexpected happened next. A few years later, David actually went back.
He had enough money, so he flew back to that small town in Italy. He found the bakery. He even found the dark-haired girl. She was now a grandmother, running the shop with her husband.
And you know what? David didn't feel joy. He felt strange.
He felt completely out of place. The town was the same, but he was different.
He wasn't 22 anymore.
He realized, standing in that bakery, that the life he had been crying over didn't exist. It had never really existed exactly the way he remembered it. It took going back for him to finally understand, you cannot walk into the same river twice. Because it is not the same river, and you are not the same person.
David returned to New York. And for the first time in 30 years, he looked around his expensive apartment and thought, what can I do today?
He stopped looking for the bakery in Italy, and started visiting the bakeries in New York. He stopped comparing his present to a dream. Sometimes, the past isn't a beautiful dream we chase.
Sometimes, it's a heavy stone we carry.
A stone made of regret.
Think about a young woman named Elena. Elena was an incredible artist.
When she was 18, she painted every day. Her room was covered in colors and messy brushes. She wanted to go to art school, but her parents told her art wasn't a real job. They told her to study accounting. So, she did. She became a very good accountant. She made her parents happy. But she stopped painting. The colors disappeared from her life, replaced by spreadsheets and numbers. For 10 years, Elena was angry. She was angry at her parents for pushing her, but mostly, she was angry at herself. She would lie awake at night, feeling a heavy tightness in her chest. If only I had been stronger, she would tell herself. If only I hadn't listened. I ruined my own life. Her anger at the past was so loud that she couldn't hear anything in the present. She pushed friends away. She didn't want to date. She was completely consumed by the what-ifs. What if she had gone to art school? What if she was famous now? What if she was actually happy? Elena was suffering from something psychologists call rumination. Rumination is like a record player stuck on the same song. It's when your brain replays a painful memory or a bad decision over and over again, hoping that maybe, this time, the ending will change. But the ending never changes. Rumination doesn't solve problems. It doesn't fix the past. It only steals energy from today. It tricks your brain into feeling the pain of the past as if it is happening right now, in this very moment. Your body releases stress hormones. Your heart beats faster. Even though the event happened 10 years ago, your body feels like it's happening today. I met Elena at a coffee shop one rainy afternoon. She looked tired. We talked about her parents, about accounting, about the art school she never attended. I can't forgive myself, she said, looking down at her coffee. I just can't. I didn't understand it at first. Why was she holding on to the anger so tightly? Then she told me something fascinating. If I forgive myself, Elena said slowly, it means my parents were right. It means it's okay that I gave up. And if it's okay that I gave up, then who am I? The anger is all I have left of the artist I used to be. Her regret was her identity. It was how she proved to herself that she still cared about art. Letting go of the regret felt like letting go of the art completely. This is a very common human experience. Sometimes we hold on to pain because it feels like the only connection we have left to something we lost. We think if we stop hurting, it means we didn't care. But what if the opposite is true? What if holding on to the pain is exactly what stops us from honoring what we lost? I asked Elena a simple question: if the artist inside you could speak right now, what would she tell you to do? Elena was quiet for a long time. The rain tapped against the window. Finally, a small tear rolled down her cheek. She would tell me to pick up a brush, Elena whispered. She didn't need to go back in time to be an artist. She didn't need to change her parents' minds 10 years ago. She just needed to buy some paint today. It is impossible to change the choices we made when we were younger. The younger versions of ourselves did the best they could with the information they had at the time. Elena at 18 was scared. She wanted her parents' love. She wasn't weak, she was just 18. When we look back with anger, we are using knowledge we have now to judge someone who didn't have that knowledge then. It's deeply unfair. Forgiveness isn't about saying the past was okay. Forgiveness is about accepting that the past is over, and it cannot hurt you anymore unless you let it. Elena bought a small canvas the next week. Just a small one. She bought 3 tubes of paint, blue, yellow, and white. She started painting on weekends. She didn't quit her accounting job. She didn't suddenly become famous. But the tightness in her chest began to fade. The colors came back. She stopped being the girl who didn't go to art school, and she became the woman who painted on Sundays. She stepped out of the past and into the present. Our relationship with the past is complicated. We often treat it like a library. We think our memories are perfect books, carefully stored on shelves, exactly as they were written. We believe that when we remember something, we are pulling out a book and reading the exact truth. But memory doesn't work like a library. Psychology tells us that memory is more like a storyteller.
Every time you remember an event, your brain doesn't just replay a video. Your brain actually rebuilds the memory from scratch. And every time it rebuilds the memory, it changes it a little bit. It adds feelings you have today. It changes the colors. It makes the bad parts worse or the good parts better. Think about a man named Arthur. Arthur was an old man, 75 years old, who lived in a quiet house near the sea. Every evening, he would walk along the beach and tell anyone who would listen about his old friend, Thomas. Thomas was a terrible person, Arthur would grumble. He stole my business idea 40 years ago. He ruined my life. I haven't spoken to him since 1982. The man is a thief. Arthur spent 40 years walking on that beautiful beach, looking at the ocean, and thinking about a man he hadn't seen in 4 decades. The anger kept him warm, but it also kept him lonely. One day, Arthur's daughter came to clean out the attic. She found a box of old letters and photographs. She brought one down to Arthur. It was a letter from Thomas, dated 1983. Arthur stared at it. His hands shook as he opened the yellowed paper. The letter said, "Arthur, I am so sorry. You were right. I was arrogant and foolish. Please forgive me. I want to fix this. Let me know when you are ready to talk." Arthur read the letter 3 times. Then, he sat down heavily in his chair. "I never opened it," he whispered. "I was so angry when it arrived, I threw it in a box. I told everyone he never apologized. I truly believed he never apologized." For 40 years, Arthur's memory had told him a story of betrayal and silence. His memory told him he was the victim of a man who didn't care. But the truth was in that box all along. His memory had shaped itself around his anger, hiding the reality that his friend had tried to make peace. Arthur's story shows us how dangerous it is to let the past control our present. When we live in the past, we are often living in a story that isn't even completely true. We are fighting ghosts. We are arguing with shadows. But letting go is easier said than done, isn't it? If letting go was easy, we would all do it. Why do we hold on? We hold on because the past is familiar. Even if the past was painful, it is known. We know exactly how it feels to be angry about that old argument. We know exactly how it feels to be sad about that lost opportunity. The past is a comfortable old sweater, even if it has holes in it. The present, however, is unpredictable. The future is terrifying. To let go of the past means stepping into the unknown. It means waking up today and deciding who you want to be right now, without relying on the stories of yesterday. It requires courage. Let's think about a university student named Leo. Leo was known as the funny guy. In high school, he was always making jokes, always laughing, always the center of attention. He built his whole personality around being happy and careless. But when Leo went to university, things changed. The classes were hard. He felt lonely. He felt anxious. He wasn't the funny guy anymore, he was just a stressed student struggling to keep up. Every time Leo went home for holidays, he tried desperately to act like the high school version of himself. He forced himself to be loud and funny, even when he felt like crying. He was terrified that if he wasn't the funny guy from the past, his friends wouldn't like him anymore. He was trapped by an old version of himself. "I feel like an actor," Leo told a counselor. "I'm playing the role of Leo from 3 years ago. But the real me is exhausted." The counselor asked him, "Who says you have to be the same person you were at 18? Leo didn't have an answer. He had just assumed that his identity was fixed. That the past had permanently defined him. In psychology, there is a concept called narrative identity. It means that we understand who we are by the stories we tell about ourselves. If you tell yourself the story, "I am the person who failed that exam," you will act like a failure. If you tell yourself the story, "I am the funny guy," you will force yourself to laugh even when you are sad. But the beautiful thing about stories is that you can write a new chapter. Leo started telling his friends the truth. He started saying, "Actually,
I'm finding university really hard.
I'm feeling quite stressed lately. He was terrified they would leave him. But they didn't. Instead, his friend said, "Me too. I thought I was the only one."
By letting go of the need to be the person he was in the past, Leo allowed himself to connect with people in the present. He realized that growing up means changing.
It means leaving old versions of yourself behind. Like a snake shedding its skin, we have to lose our old shape to grow into a new one. It's painful to shed that skin. It feels vulnerable. But it is the only way to grow. Consider a traveler named Maria. Maria spent 10 years traveling the world. She lived in hostels, carried a backpack, and never stayed in one place for more than a few months. She loved the freedom. She loved being the adventurous traveler. But when Maria turned 35, she realized she was tired. She wanted a comfortable bed. She wanted a kitchen to cook in. She wanted a dog. She wanted to plant a garden. She moved back to her home country and rented a small house. She got a regular job. For the first 6 months, Maria felt terrible. She felt like a failure. She looked at her old travel photos and cried. I used to be so interesting, she thought. I used to be brave. Now I'm just boring. I go to work and I water my plants. She was judging her present life using the rules of her past life. She told a friend, I feel like I've lost myself. Her friend, a wise, older woman, smiled. You haven't lost yourself, Maria. You've just finished a chapter. The book is still going. You were a traveler. Now, you are a builder. You are building a home. Both are beautiful. We often confuse moving on with giving up. Maria hadn't failed at traveling, she had just finished doing it. It was complete. She had learned everything she needed to learn from that part of her life. If she kept trying to live in her backpack memories, she would never enjoy the feeling of sleeping in her own bed. She would never appreciate the quiet joy of watching a tomato grow in her own garden. To live fully in the present, we have to practice acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean we are happy about everything that happened. It just means we acknowledge reality. It means looking at the past and saying, yes, that happened. It is part of my story. But it is not the whole story. Let's go back to the idea of the campfire for a moment. Imagine we are sitting around a fire. The wood crackling. The night sky above us. When you look into a fire, you see the wood turning to ash. The fire needs the old wood to burn, to create heat and light right now. But you cannot gather the ash and try to burn it again. The ash is finished. Its job is done. Our memories are like the ash. They are the result of the life we have burned through. They are proof that we lived, that we felt, that we existed. But we cannot use them to create heat today. We need new wood. We need new experiences, new connections, new choices in the present moment. Think of a man named James. James was a retired teacher. His wife had passed away 5 years earlier. They had been married for 40 years. After she died, James turned his house into a museum. He didn't move anything. Her coat stayed on the hook by the door. Her book stayed on the nightstand, with a bookmark halfway through. Her favorite teacup sat on the kitchen counter. James lived in a frozen world. He stopped seeing friends. He stopped going for walks. He spent his days sitting in his armchair, surrounded by objects that belonged to a ghost. He was breathing, but he wasn't really living. He was terrified that if he moved her coat, he would forget her. His grief was a deep, dark ocean, and he was drowning in it voluntarily, because the ocean was made of memories of her. One winter afternoon, a small bird flew down his chimney and got trapped in the living room. It was frantic, flying against the windows, trying to find a way out. James watched it for a few minutes. Then, slowly, he stood up. He walked to the front door and opened it wide. The cold winter air rushed in. The bird finally saw the open space and flew out into the pale sunlight. James stood by the open door.
The fresh air smelled like pine trees and snow. He took a deep breath. He looked at his wife's coat on the hook. It was covered in dust. He realized something very quiet and very profound. Keeping the house perfectly still wasn't keeping his wife alive. It was only killing him. His wife had loved life. She had loved going out, meeting people, trying new foods. She wouldn't want him sitting in a dusty room. Slowly, gently, James took the coat off the hook. He folded it carefully and put it in a box. He washed the teacup and put it in the cupboard. He put the book back on the shelf. He wasn't erasing her. He was making space. The next day, James called an old friend and asked to meet for coffee. James learned that moving forward doesn't mean leaving love behind. The love was inside him, not inside the coat. By engaging with the present, by opening the door and letting the fresh air in, he was finally beginning to heal. Psychologists talk about a concept called mindfulness. You have probably heard this word many times. It is very popular now. But mindfulness isn't just about sitting cross-legged and meditating. Mindfulness simply means paying attention to what is happening right now, without judging it. It means noticing the smell of your coffee, the feeling of the chair under you, the sound of the rain. When we are stuck in the past, we are rarely mindful. Our bodies are in the present, but our minds are miles away, walking through old neighborhoods and having conversations with people who aren't there.
Mindfulness is the anchor that pulls us back. Whenever you find yourself sinking into regret or nostalgia, try to find an anchor. Look around you and name 3 things you can see. Name 2 things you can hear. Name 1 thing you can touch. It sounds incredibly simple, almost silly. But it works. It sends a signal to your brain, I am here. I am safe. The past is not happening right now. Let's listen to one more story. A story about a father and a son. The father, Thomas, was a hard man. He worked in construction, building tall buildings in a busy city. He was strict. He didn't say I love you very often. He wanted his son, Michael, to be tough, to be a builder like him. But Michael wasn't tough. Michael was sensitive. He liked music. He wanted to play the piano. When Michael was a teenager, they had a terrible argument. Thomas told Michael that music was a waste of time. Michael packed a bag and left home. They didn't speak for 15 years. During those 15 years, Thomas grew old. His back hurt. He couldn't build tall buildings anymore. He sat in his small house, listening to the silence. He thought about his son every day. He replayed that terrible argument in his head 1,000 times, wishing he had chosen different words. Wishing he had listened to the music. Michael, meanwhile, became a successful pianist. He traveled and played in beautiful concert halls. But he always played with a sadness in his heart. He played for the father who never wanted to listen. He carried the rejection like a heavy stone in his pocket everywhere he went. Both men were chained to a moment that happened 15 years ago. Then, one evening, Thomas saw Michael's name in a newspaper. Michael was coming to the city to play a concert. Thomas bought a ticket. He sat in the very back row of the dark theater. When Michael walked onto the stage, Thomas felt tears in his eyes. His son wasn't a child anymore. He was a man. Michael began to play. The music was beautiful, complex, and full of emotion. Thomas listened. Really listened. For the first time in his life, he heard what his son had been trying to say all those years ago. After the concert, Thomas waited by the stage door. When Michael walked out, he stopped. The two men stared at each other. The air was heavy with 15 years of anger, hurt, and silence. Thomas took a step forward. He didn't know what to say. He couldn't undo the argument. He couldn't give back the 15 years they had lost. Michael, Thomas said, his voice shaking. Michael looked at his father. He saw the gray hair. He saw the tired shoulders.
He saw a man, not the monster from his memory.
At that moment, Michael had a choice. He could stay in the past. He could hold on to the anger. He could yell at his father and tell him it was too late. He had every right to do that. Or, he could step into the present. Michael took a deep breath. He let go of the stone in his pocket. "You came," Michael said softly.
"I came," Thomas nodded, tears finally falling.
The music, it was beautiful. They didn't fix everything in one night. They couldn't erase the past. But they didn't have to.
They just had to decide to start a new story, right there, on a cold sidewalk in the present moment. They chose to meet each other as they were now, not as they had been 15 years ago.
This is the most powerful thing we can understand about time.
The past is a place of reference, not a place of residence. We should visit it to learn, to understand how we got here, to appreciate our journey.
But we cannot live there.
If we spend all our energy trying to fix the past, trying to change what cannot be changed, we miss the only life we actually have.
We miss the life happening right in front of us.
We miss the taste of the food on our plate today.
We miss the smile of a friend we are talking to right now. We miss the feeling of the sun on our skin this morning. It takes practice.
Every time your mind wanders back to the old arguments, the lost loves, the mistakes, the missed opportunities, gently guide it back.
Remind yourself, that was a chapter. It was an important chapter. But I am reading a new page today. You are allowed to forgive your younger self. You are allowed to stop carrying the weight of things you cannot control. You are allowed to be happy today, even if yesterday was difficult. Maybe we can't change yesterday. Maybe we never could. But tomorrow has been quietly waiting for us all along. Thank you so much for joining me tonight on Daily English Podcast.
I hope this episode brought you some peace and some quiet reflection.
I want to leave you with one final question. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you could go back and tell your younger self one sentence, what would it be? Take your time. Think about it. Write it down.
If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel so we can share more quiet moments together.
Sleep well, everyone. Take care of yourselves, and remember to live in the day you are in. Until next time.